Welcome to the Underdog Sniper Podcast. I am your host, MGCovers. This is episode 57. Greatly appreciate everybody tuning in. Happy Monday. Today is May the 12th, 2025. Got a great podcast for you, a lot to cover. As always, reflect a little bit on my personal life. We'll dive into golf, which, if you don't know, is my passion. And living in the Dominican, being a member of an ocean course, it has been an extreme challenge playing into the wind. But after almost 2 months being a member here and playing golf practically every day, I feel like I'm starting to play with a lot more confidence into the wind. It's really psychologically, it just feels so much different. For example, on like a 120-yard shot into the wind, sometimes I'm hitting like my 160 club, sometimes even my 170 club, just teeing it way down. Choking way down the club and just swinging like normal. Feels a lot different, but that's sort of the norm. But golf game's actually improving. My handicap went from a 3.1 when I got here all the way up to like a 5.5. And now I've got it back down to an even 4. So actually playing some really good golf and excited to see where my golf game goes from there. All right, so let's dive into the podcast. I'll give you an outline of what we're going to do. We're going to talk about Major League Baseball. We're going to take a look at the model. Really going to have two options of how we can play the model now. I'll go through those. We're going to talk about soccer. Had a ton of regression with the model, but it still looks solid and it's a complete 100% plug and play. I'll show you the numbers on that. And then finally, I'm going to talk about a new model that I'm looking at on the PGA Tour. Obviously, I'm an avid golfer and had built a model, I guess 3 years ago. It was successful. It was up like 15 units or maybe more than that. That was 3 years ago. Then it regressed that previous year, then the next year, and then I never really tracked it much after that. But I'm going to show you sort of what I call a form-based model for PGA Tour, just sort of the beginning. And hopefully that can give you some tips and something that you can use in your own handicap, or whether it's for golf or any other sport. All right, so let's dive into Major League Baseball. We'll take a look at a couple things here. So first thing you're going to see on the screen, I talked about this in a video earlier in the week, and this is exactly how I handicapped last year. So what I did was I played the top 6 teams via the model, but only if they're not playing another top 10 team, no run lines. So if you don't play any run lines, your win percentage will increase as opposed to playing run lines. And hopefully that will give you a significant ROI. Now, this is back tested back to 5-1. We only started wagering this way the last 3 days. Had an 0 for day on May 10th, which sucked. And then, of course, we had a winning day yesterday. So tracking this from 5-1 up until yesterday, it's gone 17 and 12, 3.08 units. I would say the ROI is probably going to be under 10%. And then the win percentage, as you can see there, is 58%. So that's a really good sign. The only thing alarming, if you look at this, and that's why I'm going to give you another option, go back and take a look at 5-6. This is wild. And what do you notice notice as I go through this: Yankees minus 132, Cubs minus 141, Seattle 134, Mets minus 106, Boston 141, so on and so on, all the way down. If you're listening to this, minus 118, minus 127, minus 141. They're all favorites. So let's see what this is. Last 15 plays handicapping this way have all been favorites. And that's a little bit of concern because in years past, or even last year, we would still have some dogs factored in. And it just feels like now that the market has sort of adjusted to where the entire market has recognized, quote, the good teams. And so therefore you're going to pay a premium for the good teams. Now it's still going to be profitable, I feel like, long term, but might be something to consider, to where, even though I said I wasn't going to play run lines, maybe taking this same model, and I might back test this today, where I take all of these teams here and play the away team on the run line to increase my ROI. Obviously, the win percentage will decrease a little bit, but that might be something we have to do just to avoid playing all favorites. And the reason this might be a concern is if you play all favorites, nothing wrong with that, but favorites in Major League Baseball only win right at 60% of the time. So if you're laying a lot of juice, again, it can still be profitable, but it might be more profitable adding in some run lines with those away teams. So that might be something I test. And speaking of that, let's take a look at this next sheet over here. And what I did here, I kept back testing the same way, or kept tracking this, even though I wasn't actually playing it this way. And this is exactly how we did it in the preseason. Played top 10 teams. And if it was an away team, we played on the run line. So take a look at 510. This is pretty interesting. Now, what I actually wagered was Seattle, Mets, and Detroit. This is when we had the Ofer day. I think that was, what was that, Saturday? But if I'd have played all the top 10 teams, you can see here we picked up some dogs. Philadelphia, Minnesota. Yep, Philadelphia, Minnesota. So still had a losing day, but instead of going 0 for 3 and paying some juice, I think it was only down, minus 1.45 units. And then look at yesterday, we played Mets, Detroit, and Yankees. And of course, some of these were playing on the run line, obviously. The model added in Philadelphia, Houston, and Boston. And like I said in that video previously, if you play run lines, it will decrease the win percentage a little bit, but you're going to pick up some ROI simply because you're going to play some money line dogs here on the run lines. 85 and 74, and this is tracking this all the way back to 410. And check out that unit. That is plus 19.71 units. So if we had started with this on April the 10th all the way through yesterday, it would be up 19.71 units. So this is still a legit way to handicap as well. Just to review what I'm doing. So all the top 10 teams, as long as they're not playing another top 10 team and then playing the away team on the run line. And if it's a home team and it's less than minus 150, just playing that as a side, minus 145, minus 120, whatever that line is. So that has been positive as well. And the big takeaway is, and one thing I was concerned with going into this year, was this model going to be able to sustain and have the same amount of success it had last year and then the previous year? And it actually has. So feeling confident about this. I still believe, for me, I'm going to stick with playing the top 6 teams this way. And another reason being is if you play a lot of volume. Let me go back and show you this. So we had yesterday 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. If we play 6 teams, say at probably 200 apiece, that's $1,200 risk for today. Whereas yesterday I played 500 apiece. So we had $1,500 wagered, went 2-1, and still able to turn right at a $500 profit. So this way is a little bit more feasible for the bankroll, I guess, because the more volume you play, you're going to have to risk more to keep up that same ROI. So in practical bankroll management, I actually like this way, playing lesser teams each day so I can play more each team, whether it's, 1/3 unit or, half a unit per play. So anyway, but the main takeaway is that this model is positive. So super excited to see where we end up seasons in. All right, let's dive in and talk about soccer. And this model that I switched to, it was basically a combination of the old model and incorporating some things I did daily handicapping. I want you to see how good this model was going into the weekend. Now, obviously it crashed and burned, but going into 510, make sure I got this right. Yep, there it is. Look at that unit wise, y'all. It was up from 425. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. In 5 days, it yielded a profit of plus 15.1 units. And we're going to talk about regression too, because this is so important. It went on an 18 to start, 18 and 4 run, which is absolutely absurd and very difficult to do in soccer. So what I mean by regression, if you have a model that's 18 and 4, it's obviously going to regress the other way. And that doesn't mean it's going to go, 10 and 6. It's probably going to take a losing skid, because it's going to regress all in anything. It's always going to regress back to 50%. And some might even say regress below 33%, because in soccer you have 3 sides, the home, away, and of course the draw. And it regressed heavily. And you can see from this weekend, it went, 6 and 11, which isn't bad, but you can see how far it regressed down to, I guess, what would be considered normal. So from the last 2 weeks, this model, which is 100% plug and play, there's no handicapping in it. I've got this model where it just generates the plays each day, 22 and 15, which is 59%. So even though it feels like we lost a ton there, we need to keep, perspective of, having a soccer model hitting 59% is really, really solid. And obviously it might regress some below that, but at 2.03 units, and that's playing a lot of heavy juice. And if you look over here, I made one alteration. I may tweak this some more. So what I did was I went back and anything that was minus 200 and above sportsbook line, I eliminated those games. So this helped to increase my ROI significantly. And if you look over here on the left-hand side, I don't have the wins and losses per se. I just did this quickly this morning. We're able to get that ROI up to 3.85. One thing I've always talked about, and I want to make this point here in this podcast, is that helping people understand and define what success is in sports betting. I remember on Twitter one time, it was Fezzik, Steve Fezzik, who is a sharp. He posted his record. I can't remember what year it was, but some other handicapper said, wow, you're a professional handicapper and you only made 3 units average per month. I don't know if it was a summer or if it was one of his years that he had handicapped. Listen, 3 units per month, and that's grading one play as 1 unit is very good. So in 12 months, that would be 36 units. We had a total of 47 last year. So, when you're looking at a specific sport, even at 2 units for one sport, like if we would, this was for 2 weeks. So in these 2 weeks, this model went 22 and 15 up 2.03 units. So if it was able to do that long term, just sustain this, that would be 4 units a month times 12 months of soccer puts us at 48 units year to date for soccer, which would be phenomenal, which would be 1 unit more than we made for the entire year last year. So I'm excited about this model. Again, still might make some tweaks, not necessarily to the stats or how we calculated it, but just how we handicap it. But definitely moving it in the right direction despite this regression we had here this past week. All right, so I want to talk a little about the PGA Tour. I've often said this, form is what we call a subjective angle. And if you're new, the way I learned this business was you have the objective side of handicapping, which is the model that is 100% statistically driven. And then the other part of handicapping is what we call the subjective part. Those are not necessarily stats per se. It could be form, it could be line movement, it could be injuries, it could be factoring in some statistical properties, meaning only playing home teams in soccer, only playing home teams in, college basketball and college football. Those sides win 70% of the time. So what I did was looking at a form-based model, and I'll show you this model briefly. And one thing I've noticed in watching the PGA Tour over the years, a player that wins a tournament at any point during this year is considered to be in good form. And you can often expect that player to win again later in the season. So for example, the model would be maybe creating a set of players and add them in. So for example, Hideki wins here, you would play him to win the next week. Nick Taylor wins the Sony Open, you add him to the pool to win, and then Sepp Straka wins the American Express. So you'd have these players to win the following week, et cetera, et cetera. Now, and the reason behind this, take a look at Sepp Straka won the American Express back in January 6th. I think the final round was on the 19th. And then look at Rory McIlroy winning the AT&T Pebble Beach Pro-Am. So we have Sepp Straka and Rory McIlroy had won earlier in the year back in January. Now let's go to the Masters, which was when Roy also won the Players, which was about a month before the Masters. And we take a look at this tab here, shows the odds for Rory in the Masters. So obviously, maybe you wouldn't have played all those players that had previously won, but you can see the fact that Roy had won previous tournaments. Whatever type of handicapping you were using, you would definitely include him in the pool of players, whether it's 2, 3, 4, etc. And, if you had 4 players in this pool and you played Roy, you would take 3 of those players would have lost. So that'd be minus 300. Roy McIlroy wins, which was plus 650. So you'll be up 3.5 units. Now let's take a look at Sepp Straka, who actually won. I get sure I got this on the screen. Yeah. So he won previously. So we're keeping him in that pool because he's the previous winner. And check this out. He won yesterday. This would have been a massive, massive win. So let's say you've got, maybe 10 players in this pool that have won previously going into this. So 9 of those would have lost, and you would have had Sepp Straka would have won. Guys, that was a 40 unit win plus 4,000. So you'd have been down 9 units, up 40 units. So extremely, extremely profitable to play this way. So again, something very simple. You don't have to know anything about golf really to do it this way. And this is something I'm going to work on, and you might see me come out with another video actually coming up with a more defined system of how we would handicap this based on odds, how many players we would put in our pool. But there's definitely a correlation to players that have won. And if they've won a tournament, that confirms that they're in good form. And then, of course, also means that they have the potential to win later on in the season as well. So super excited about that. I do want to mention this. Backing up here to soccer and Major League Baseball power rankings. If you're not aware, you can get access to these power rankings every single day. I'll show you today's lines here. The top 10, I haven't posted the actual plays, but you can get access to this $50 a month, very inexpensive to join. You also get access to the soccer lines as well. In addition to that, you get access to all my coaching videos. I've said this before. If you have no baseline of education in this business, there is no way to succeed. I mean, you can't just start wagering and get better at just wagering. You have to have some type of baseline of education. This is a very simple and inexpensive way to do it. $50 a month. If you want access to all that, in addition to all my plays, $100 a month. And then instead of paying $100 a month, you can join for an entire year. You save like $600, $499 for an entire year. So you get access to all that I just mentioned for $499. There's a link to join in the description of this video. Greatly appreciate you listening to this podcast. Hope it provides some value. Like, subscribe to the channel. Talk to you guys next week. Peace.